Hello and welcome back to Pandemic Playground with Dave. So today we are back in the experimental playground because we are going to play around with target dummies. Right, so with the Warfare 1 update, we get these target dummies, which are pretty cool. Which is something you can shoot down a bit, and it looks like you can shoot the limbs off, meaning the left and right arm, and then the body, and then it can regenerate also. So there's a few nifty things about the target dummy, and if we go into the control panel here, as I mentioned before, this enable regeneration, so that means it will just bring back the target dummy after you destroy it, and you can set the regeneration delay, so pretty much the seconds or time that it's going to regenerate or respawn the body of the dummy itself. And of course you gotta turn it on and off. But one nifty thing is that it does have a setup action, which has two of them. So the first one is based on getting hit, which is the target dummy getting hit by a bullet or something like that. And the second one's actually when the target dummy has been taken down. And when I say taken down, I mean just the top half here, the dummy half, and not this bottom half. So if you take out this bottom half, you're pretty much destroying the block a bit. So that's something you don't want to do. Right, so pulling out a pistol here, I have these pistons set up for the setup actions just to kind of demonstrate how it kind of works. So as I mentioned, the first action is based on it being hit. So what it's going to do is pretty much reverse these pistons based on the actions. The left one based on when it's hit. So if I shoot this one now, you see that it reverses the piston itself. And if I shoot again, it's going to reverse again. So that was setup action 1. So setup action 2, it is actually based off of this target dummy portion, the top half, not this base again. When it goes away, it's like as such, it activates the setup action number 2. So that's how that kind of works. So I did find out if you shoot the limbs, it does come off. So if I were to destroy it again, action number 2 retracts that setup there. So there's some things you can play around with those type of actions. I find it to be fairly interesting. And again, I mentioned before, if you break the top half, that's fine, where the top will spawn again if you set up the regeneration. However, if you shoot the bottom half, which is the base of the dummy, you definitely don't want to break this, because this is pretty much the block itself, and shooting that kind of disables pretty much the top portion of it there. So you definitely want to, when you're shooting these things, shoot the top half. So of course it is an experimental video, or as we all know, just me playing around with random stuff. And since we have target dummies now, might as well play around with it some more. So we figured out how the target dummies work, but now we have pretty much a nice little range or shooting range for target dummies. So I have these all set up in an interesting way where you can shoot them and pretty much it goes down. So it's kind of like a little bit of a shooting range where you shoot it and then the target goes down, and then if you go to the next one, same thing. All these targets, if you hit it correctly, they're gonna just go down. Did I not hit this one right? Yeah. So it just keeps going down. Bit of a little shooting range kind of setup here, which I thought was gonna be pretty interesting and a little bit of fun. So you can just run around and practice shooting with my aim. So right there, just can't aim right there. But as you see here, we're just gonna keep running around and shoot it. And then of course you'll see when it's destroyed. So a quick, easy little shooting range, or kind of like testing out the range here, which is pretty interesting too. I haven't tested out the ranges for the weapon itself. So eventually I probably will look into that at a later time, but I'm not sure if we're gonna do a video on that. I just want to test out the range really, and this is a pretty fun way to do that. So if we're stepping it up, we have some cover, some target dummies to shoot at. So basically we have some new fire covers, which is this one here. Here's the older one. We have the embrasure, we have a table, and a kitchen. It may happen, you never know. Right, so the way it's set up here, it's actually through sensors. Once I approach the cover, the target dummy pops up, and we can shoot the target dummy until it breaks. And once it breaks, it's a bit of a surprise. Which is that. A buddy of his will pop up over there, so you can have another shot at that in a way. So once that goes down, once it gets shot, that disappears and eventually comes back up if you destroy this target dummy as well. So again, just a bit of a shooting range with some cover. So that's the new fire cover there. Here's the older one where you can shoot from cover. So here's the embrasure where you can only shoot through this little hole. It's a little hard to see, but you still, I mean, you still gotta get decent aim at it. Kind of right on the crotch, unfortunately, not in the head. I think we could just back up a little more just to get to it, and I think I destroyed it. There you go. Yeah, I can't get to the head whatsoever based on how it's being censored. So yeah, that becomes a little interesting with the embrasure here. And of course, this buddy over here popped up as well. And of course, stick around towards the end of the video. I'll show you exactly how I set these things up. But for the meantime, yeah, so this is my more kind of different shooting range where we can pretty much get onto here, pop it up, shoot it, and then break them, and then eventually his buddy will show up as well. So let's see if I can pop this one up. There we go, and his buddy shows up right there. And then of course, if any time you may come into war or a firefight and you hide behind some kitchens, here you go. You got a little bit of cover from it, and of course you can fire right through it as well. So that's pretty much the kind of setup for this fire range. And of course, why not make it even more interesting, right? So to make it more interesting, I bumped it up a little bit, and that is actually playing around with moving parts or moving dummies. So I use the same covers here. You can just ignore that. But we just easily just put a piston here on some timers, and it's running this dummy here, moving left and right. And of course, you see there's some cover as well, so you can practice your aim with moving targets this way. So that's an interesting way of doing it. And of course, sometimes you want to try your best to shoot through an embrasure and get some practice. Here's your chance to do so. The second one I made was just a quick easy rotor thing just to make him spinning. Makes no difference because you can just shoot down the middle and you pretty much take him down. And lastly, we have this rotor one here that's spinning in a pretty decent circle and a pretty decent speed. And as you can see, I can't even aim for it that well. It's just because I'm not that great at it. But that kind of gives us a bit of a challenge. So of course, you could do a lot of different types of ranges here and a lot of different types of setup where you can make moving parts. My favorite is actually this one here where you can actually use a piston to make it move left and right and then have some cover in front of it. So good little practice sessions here and there for your shooting ranges or for these new weapons that we got from the Warfare 1 updates. Alright, so if you're planning to stick around, let me just explain some of the setups here. So it was actually not too difficult. I'm pretty sure you could figure it out just by watching this video or just by doing it yourself, to be honest. But pretty much what I did is have the setup actions on the target dummy to activate the timers for the first range here, the first shooting range. So it activates one block to tell the hinge to reverse, and then it's gonna tell it's gonna also at the same time tell the other block to give it a few seconds before bringing the hinge back in reverse. So that's pretty much how I set that up. So if I jumped into here, so hitting the target dummy is gonna trigger timer block 1, and the timer block 1 has the reverse hinge as I mentioned, and it's gonna hit target block or timing block 1A, which is the one next to it, and then it's also gonna turn on the rotating light, which is the one back there. But that's if you want to add additional stuff. But once it runs 1A is gonna tell to turn off the rotating light and reverse the hinge back to its 90-degree angle. So that's pretty much how that's done. This one's simple as that. You can add a lot more. The main reason why I didn't add action 2 on here is because if you destroy it, it's going to activate something, but it's not going to deactivate something until you destroy it again. So that, I mean, I can kind of think of some reasonable things to work that with, but in terms of this little quick setup, it was not important to have that there. So this one was a little more complicated. This one's similar in the fact that when you shoot it, it goes reverse the hinge, and then it'll reverse the hinge back. But we added a sensor block here, and if I put on the show field range, that's the sensor range that I set up on. So if you're on your sensor block itself, like set up as 2 meters left, 2 meters right, 4 meters bottom, 0.1 meter top, back, and 1 meter on front. So that kind of gives us that shape right over here. And we have the setup here. Setup 1 is the hinge to reverse to the 9-degree angle so we can see the target dummy. And it's going to activate timer 1B, which is this one back here. And this one has the setup of telling the hinge to reverse again. So basically that means if I'm on the sensor, the hinge will reverse to the 9-degree angle, and if I'm off the sensor, it's gonna reverse where it's hidden. So that's how that works. And just jumping back to the old way, or the first range, is anytime you hit the target dummy, it's gonna go down, and eventually if you break it, it's gonna bring up the target dummy on the top. So that's where I utilize action number 2 on the target dummy. So if I break the target dummy, what's going to happen is going to activate the piston, or piston 1, which is this one here, to reverse. So that's what it brought this guy up. So eventually, if I break this guy again, it will pretty much tell the piston to go back down once you break the dummy off of the thing there, as you see there. And of course, if you break this guy here, it's going to tell the system or the piston to reverse also. So it's all kind of like these random little complicated sections there, but it's fairly easy to build. Kind of get used to setting up all timer blocks. I'm not that great at timer blocks, but I've been playing around with it. It was confusing at first, but after a while you just think about it or map it. Honestly, it just works out better if you write it down, or just map how you want to link your timing blocks. But it does get tedious if you're making 5 of them, so you just do the same thing 5 times basically, which is not the best thing in the world. And for this one, it's the same thing in terms of the range, but with the moving parts, this piston is just running on a timer, so it's just a timer telling it to reverse after 2 or 3 seconds, telling the other timer to reverse, and it's just, that's why it's just going back and forth, as simple as that. So that's pretty much how to make these ranges if you were interested in it. I'm pretty sure you guys who are watching will probably figure it out just by watching it, to be honest. But if not, I hope that was helpful to you guys and kind of inspires some fun builds for you guys that would be pretty interesting. Alright, as always, if you made it to the end of the video, please hit that thumbs up, like the video, consider subscribing to the channel if you have not done so yet. Feel free to drop some comments below. And of course, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.